the single most effective way for you to get what you want. Keep watching. This is Life Mastery Gym. I'm Damon, and I teach people just like you cutting-edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can take charge of your life and master your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so you can get these videos on a regular basis. What I'm going to show you in this video is so simple and so overlooked. In fact, that's probably why it's so overlooked, because it's really so simple. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a much clearer understanding of how to get what you want, and something that you can start doing immediately. I've been studying NLP, persuasion, and the art of getting what you want for many, many years. So trust me when I say that when you hear how simple this is, keep listening, because you are probably not utilizing this to the fullest extent. And if along the way you have any questions or any comments, make sure you put them right down here below. I will respond to you. When I was a kid, I grew up with two other brothers, one 4 years older than me and one 2 years younger than me. And what I heard for the majority of our childhood was, Damon always gets what he wants, which of course was not true at all. But when you looked at what I did and the things that I got to do and the things that I received from my parents, and not just from my parents, but other places as well and from other people, it probably did appear that way, that I got a lot more of what it was that I wanted. And the first thing I'm going to give you is not really what this video is about, but part of that was I made good grades and I played ball, and I played the game with my parents, in other words. I did what I was supposed to do. I stayed out of trouble. I got my stuff done because I didn't want to be bothered, and I didn't want my freedom limited. So that was one piece of it. The other part of it was I asked. If I wanted something, I asked for it. And my brothers would say, well, if they would tell me no if I asked for it, and I would say, you don't know that until you ask. And I see this so often with people, whether it's my clients or people who are complaining about not getting what they want. And usually that's the first thing that I ask them. I would say, well, have you asked someone for what it is that you want? Oh, I could never do that. I could never ask someone for that. Why not? Well, that would make things really awkward, and I don't want to be given this thing that I want. I want to earn it, or want to work for it. And absolutely, like earning something, working for something rather than somebody just giving it to you, there is definitely fulfillment and rewards that go with that. But if we have to earn and work for absolutely everything that we want, we're probably not going to get everything that we want. And some things are okay to ask for. Maybe you have to sit with that for a little bit and figure out what's okay for you to ask for and what's not okay for you to ask for. But if it gets you ahead and it gets you further along, and the other person is willing to give it to you, why not? Leave it up to them, the person you're asking, who is a full-grown adult. Of course, make sure you're asking someone who's of the cognition to give you permission or to give you whatever it is that you're asking for. We don't want to take advantage of anyone. And if they are an aware human being, then they're not going to give it to you if it hurts them in any sort of way. If they shouldn't be giving it to you, they won't give it to you. It's likely that they can make their own decisions for themselves, and they can say no, and you can make it available to them to say no. I do that all the time. If I ask somebody for something that maybe it does feel a little bit awkward, maybe it does feel a little uncomfortable, then I might say, look, feel free to say no. I'm just asking. And I never get angry at people for asking me for something. I had a friend one time say that, I hate to ask this of you. And it was like, you can ask me anything. The reason why is because I can say no to you. If you demand something from me, then I might get a little testy. I might get a little upset, because nobody likes that feeling of being demanded from. So when you ask somebody for something, you don't want to demand it, and leave them a way out. Say, look, feel free to say no, but I'm going to ask you for this, and then put it out there. You will be amazed at how many people will say yes. And that's right there is half the battle. Just asking someone, maybe it makes you a little nervous to ask someone. Maybe it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. but do you want to get what you want? And then just do this. It's so easy. And when people say, no, I can't do that. No, I couldn't ask for that. And I start, unpacking it. Well, why is that? And it ranges from anywhere from, oh, the person will say no, I'm going to get rejected. I'm going to be embarrassed. There's just no way that the person's going to say yes. Well, none of these things you actually know until you do it. And as long as you're not pleading or begging, if you're coming from a place of intense lack, or you're being desperate, like, yeah, that you don't want to be. But if you simply just ask for something, all they can do is say yes or no. But we work up these whole entire stories in our heads about, the person saying no, I'm getting rejected, blah, 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 blah. And again, you don't know that until you actually ask. And you'll see that when you start doing this, when you make it a regular habit to ask people for what it is that you want, it becomes easier and easier. So you will get more of what you want when you ask. So don't be afraid to ask. And if you are afraid to ask, there's your challenge right there. Overcome that fear. How do you overcome that fear? Get familiar with the territory. Go in and actually ask. Now, you might be saying, okay, cool, Damon. I've asked for things before and I did not get them. I was rejected, or I was told no. So, sure, this technique works, if you can call it a technique. It does work sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time. I don't know anything that does work all the time. So let's get that out of the way first. Of course, it doesn't work all the time because you're leaving it up to the person to say no, so they could well say no. So how do we get around this? There are some little tactics that you can do to set things up so that the person says yes. Think about it like this. How can you set things up beforehand to make it so that the person almost has to say yes, or they would want to say yes? One way you could do that is if you have already done something for them. Maybe they had asked you for a favor before, or maybe they need something done. Well, if you step up and sort of volunteer to do it first, then you ask for something. This goes into the law of reciprocity that Robert Cialdini outlined in his book Influence. If you've done something up front and then you ask for the favor, they almost have to say yes. Now, you got to be careful how you do that too. It might look so obvious, like you go and do something, then you kind of go, okay, now do this for me. That's not going to sit so well. But if you just voluntarily did something nice, and then again, you don't demand, you just ask, they're likely to do it. Now, here's the other thing. You want to set the question up so that it's not such a yes or no question. Maybe it softens a little bit. I'll give you an example. When you walk into a department store, when we're not in a pandemic, when you walk into a department store and the person working in the store says, can I help you with anything? We are sort of hardwired. It's a knee-jerk reaction to just say no. Not all of you, but most of you. And I know that I'm that way. I walk into a store. I actually do need help. The person says, can I help you with something? And I just say no. And then I'm walking away and it's like, wait a minute, I actually do need help with something. It's kind of how the question is set up, and it's kind of how we're automated to answer. So know the person you're asking, kind of know, how might they be automated to answer. And a lot of times it's just easier for people to say no because there's no obligation there. Well, if I just say no, then, I'm off the hook. I don't have to do anything. So you can sort of turn this around in conversation. And you could say things like, would you have any objection to? And then say whatever it is you're asking them for. Well, if they say no, because that's what we're sort of automated to do, right? Well, they just told you they have no objection to it. So in a sense, they're telling you yes. And you might want to get a little more clarification with that, depending on what it is you're asking for. But little things like this, and not one single thing like this, but little things like this stacked on top of each other, will make it more likely that you get a yes. And here's the other thing. Getting a no is not a bad thing. We tend to think that a no is rejection, and rejection says something about who I am. It says something about my self-worth. It says something about how good I am, or if I'm enough or I'm not enough. And that's completely absurd. No, it has nothing to do with that. Do not take a no or rejection as having to say anything about your worth, which nobody can judge, not even you. Self-worth is not a real thing. I can do a separate video about that. In fact, if you want me to do a separate video about self-worth, let me know in the comments below. So when you think about it like that getting a yes or no for what it is you're asking for has no bearing on who you are whatsoever. That will take a lot of the inhibition to asking for what you want completely out of it. it becomes a lot easier when you realize there's no real implication here on my worth or my value by getting a yes or no. So that pulls it out, right? That pulls a large chunk of this inhibition out. The other thing too is a no is good information. It's really good information. So the more you can understand why the person tells you no, the more likely you can alter things, change things so that you start getting a lot more yeses. So let's talk about dating. This is a big one. I get a lot of sort of questions about this. It's kind of like people don't want to come right out and say it, but that's what they're asking for. And I do have a lot of experience in this area because I challenged myself to approach women when I saw a woman I was interested in or someone who I was attracted to have the guts to go and approach her, introduce myself, and if things went well, ask her out on a date. I don't do that anymore because I have a girlfriend now, and that's exactly how I met her. I saw her walking downtown, and I walked up to her and introduced myself and did exactly that. And I hate to think that if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have spent the last 2 years with an amazing woman. So think about the opportunities you miss out on when you don't ask. So anyway, what does a no tell you? This is amazing information to know. So like when I would get a no from a woman, if I asked her out without being like pleading and desperate and without saying the word why, because why makes people defensive. If somebody gives you an answer and they say no and you say why, it kind of makes them defensive. So we don't want to do that. But if you say, hey, you know what? I just want to understand this better. I'm not trying to talk you into anything, but I'm just curious about why you said no. It's okay if you soften the why in a sentence like that. Or how come you said, it's a little easier. How come you said no? And I'm just interested because I just want to know. Like I want to know what it is I could do different next time. You'd be amazed at how much good information people will give you when they say no and you ask them very gently. You're not pleading, you're not trying to talk them into something, you just want to know more information about it. And again, so I just use dating as an example. This is in sales as well. I used to do that. I'd get rejected in sales and I would say, okay, I get it, you made your choice and I'm not going to try to talk you out of it, but I just want to know for my own information, well, what is it about what I offered you that didn't click for you? It didn't do it for you. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the product you're selling. Sometimes it just has to do with what it is they're looking for, whatever their needs are, whatever their wants are. What you have is just not lining up with them. And that's okay. That's, you have the same thing in your life. There are things that you want. There are things that you don't want. It's not because you hate people. It's not because you judge people. It's not because you want to reject anyone. That's just how it is. So we want to respect that in other people. Now, sometimes you will find out, they will give you good information and you will understand much better what adjustment you could make when you go to ask someone else for that sell or you go to ask someone else out on that date. That person gives you good information, you make that adjustment, and then the next time you're in a position like that where you want to ask for what you want, you have made that adjustment, and so it's more likely that you will get a yes. One of the things I learned when I was in sales, when I was in insurance sales, the single most important factor that most salespeople missed who weren't getting sales, they simply did not ask for the sale. They put the presentation out in front of the person, of the potential client, and at the end of it, they all just kind of sat there in awkward silence, the salesperson hoping that they had done such an incredible presentation that the client would jump across the desk and say, sign me up right away. And we know that doesn't happen. So you have to ask for the sale. And there was somebody who said, I think it might have been Zig Ziglar, you have to ask like 6 or 7 times for the sale most often before you get it. And then I've heard other great salespeople say, no, you've got to ask 20 to 25 times. And be careful about that because you don't want, like I said, you don't want to get into the place of begging. But if you're asking for the information as to why they're not saying yes, and you're making those adjustments, you might come back and ask again. And then you might come back and ask in different ways. There are ways to be artful about this, and the more you do it, the better you will get. The more you can rephrase your question, you can rephrase your request in ways that don't sound so pushy, but again, you're still asking for the sale. And of course, by sell, I mean by getting someone to say yes, getting someone to give you whatever it is that you want, whatever it is that you're asking for. To summarize, just ask. Think about a situation where you want something and think of someone who might be able to give it to you, or maybe can give you a resource that would help you get what it is that you want, or maybe you just want someone to mentor you. Just ask. It's very simple. And you've probably talked yourself out of asking at some point when there was something that you could easily ask for and speed things up and simply receive it much faster than it would take to work for it. And then there are ways as well to set yourself up to get a yes. And so you can use language patterns, you can use the influence principles that Robert Cialdini outlined in his books. I highly recommend both of his books on persuasion. And then if you get a no, that's not a bad thing. Now you have an opportunity here. Now you have an opportunity to learn something. And maybe what you learn is that it has nothing to do with you and that there is no adjustment you can make here. It's just that what you have, what you're offering, or what you're asking for just does not line up for that person and really has nothing to do with you. Or maybe there is something you could do better. Maybe there is some sort of adjustment you could make. I can't tell you how many videos I made that first year that I was doing YouTube where I was terrible. I couldn't talk to a camera. I was really bad at it. It was really monotone and my face didn't even move. And people would tell me these things. And instead of shutting it all down and stopping doing videos, I kept making these little adjustments here and there to make my videos better and to make it so that I presented better. And you can do the same thing too, but you're not going to know that unless you get the feedback. So you have to ask, you have to receive a no, ask for more information about why you got the no, and then make those adjustments if there's any adjustments to be made. Or it just might be, hey, it wasn't a fit. And if that's the case, nothing's lost, and now you know. And so you can let it go. You don't have to go on for the rest of your life, thinking about how terrible it was that you got rejected. Follow this, simply ask, never be afraid to ask for what it is that you want. If you would like to learn more about what it is that I do, how I coach, how I teach, there is a link in the description below. If you go to that link, click that link, and it will bring you to a website which will give you more information, and also there's some really cool freebies there as well that you can take advantage of. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe by clicking that subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out. And last but not least, if you can think of a family member or a friend who would benefit from watching this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.